Bantaba Dialogues is with me, Ibrahima, and today we're back again to shine light on some of the current affairs that are happening back home in the Gambia. And as you can see, my first guest with me is attorney, or as Gambians would call it, lawyer Sarjo Barrow, based here in the United States. And my co-host Malmo Sambou would also be joining me momentarily, I hope. And my other guests also include Yusuf Tunkara, NPP Student Wing Leader, and also Melville Roberts. Melvin is another individual who is a legal person, a lawyer, based in the UK and very prominent when it comes to Gambian legal and political commentary. They've all agreed to come on, but I like to be a stickler for time, even though sometimes it's hard in terms of keeping up that commitment. But we have to make sure that whenever we have one individual available, we can start and proceed to focus on the issues that we want to. But since I have Sajo here, Sajo, welcome once again on the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. And then greetings to all the viewers and your guest, West wishes.
Very well. It seems you had some home experience recently. How did that go?
It was an unexpected trip, not under the best of circumstances, but still, I'm grateful to see after a very long time and then reconnect with loved ones, family, just see how things change or lack thereof, depending on from what spectrum you're viewing it. But home is always home.
Home is always home. There is no place like home. Yeah. So part of what I wanted us to talk about today is obviously one of the main reasons why I asked you to come is because to help us understand the recent immigration bill that has been gazetted in the Gambia. Um, you know, I didn't know this until you wrote the article that Gambia has never had. I think this is is unprecedented. We've never had an immigration bill that is modern and also reflects a lot of what's happening in most parts of the world today. So I wanted us to begin there for you to talk to us about what this means because you wrote an article about it, and you commended the Gambia government for the initiative, but also you highlighted critical areas. In fact, you went further to analyze it clause by clause according to your article, and also presented your position in terms of critical areas that they should prioritize or focus on, and present it to the National Assembly or whoever committee is responsible. I'm hoping that we can begin there. Talk to us about that bill, especially in light of anti-immigrant sentiments that we hear in our community today, which also stems from the fact that a young person was stabbed to death. May his soul rest in peace, Yunus Mbai. And people have different feelings about when situations like that happen. So I was wondering if we could begin there and talk to us about what is included in this bill and what are the implications and what difference does it stand to make in the Gambian context. Omar, welcome.
Oh, sorry, man. I'm coming in late, Mr. Barrow. It's good to see you. Wait, not ambassador Kuliola, you know.
Haftano looks good.
Magana dile, me Kuliola, me alfa Kuliola. But it's good. It's good to be back here. You know. How's it going?
Awesome. We're here, man. I was just Sadio was just gonna walk us through the new immigration bill that has been gazetted by Gambia government and what that includes, and also hopefully that sort of addresses some of the immigration problems that we're hearing in the Gambia. So that's where we're starting from.
That's great. It's good. It's good you bring Sarjo because for the most part, people keep calling my phone asking me stuff that I don't know and I don't have answers to. So it's always great to have you, Mr. Barrow. I think you've been very instrumental in guiding people who definitely need a lot of guidance. And it's good to have you again. Always good to have you.
Thank you, Dr. Mamo. And then it's a pleasure. And then I know, Mr. Sonko, you asked, but that is a comprehensive bill. I don't even think, I'll be doing justice if I said I can dissect everything on a show. Yes, I did read the bill. I did a first reading, a closer reading again. And then The article was a byproduct of the position paper I've written on, and then yet to submit it. I give it to a few people. I supposed to visit NAM, and then but Gambia for you, I could not make it on time, but I do intend to bring it over there. Now, the bill actually opened my eye to know that we have a Citizenship Act. It's important for us to know there's a lot of piecemeal acts in Gambia that you will stumble on. And then we have a Citizenship Act that address, how we drive citizenship or give light to the constitutional provisions. But in terms of immigration itself, we were operating on the 1965 Immigration Act, whether it predate February 15 before we became an independent country, that I don't know. I haven't looked into that history. What made this bill a little bit more progressive, and then the reason I commend it, is the first time we were actually writing a more comprehensive bill as a nation. So that's why I thought it's imperative everyone, civil society, students, Gambians, to have their say, especially with what's happening around the world. And then we have seen the rise of nationalists in several countries, and then everyone try to tighten their borders, and then us versus them became a topic. I did not review the bill from that point of view. I want the bill to be strong in the sense that for us to have security in the Gambia, but as well as also observe our obligations to our old domestic legislation, starting with the Constitution, which is the floor, as well as some of the commitments we made from an international point of view. My observation, in as much as I commend, and then I know Gambians, I keep saying these things, and then with utmost respect, we don't want to read. And sometimes I don't know whether we read to respond or we want to read to understand. And then I think there is a huge, my article, in fact, if anything, supports the government. I want the immigration officers to be empowered. That's where there's a disjunct between this bill and then what it referred to. And then some of the questions that are unanswered from practical experience I see here. A case in point, the first area in terms of security. And then lately we have seen violent crime happening more often than not. Now, let me qualify that. Previously, maybe we don't have social media, or social media was not prevalent as it's now. So it is entirely possible that the murder rate has always been the same, or it's in fact declined, because you need statistics to speak of that. But what I can say is that recently, in terms of the phenomena, Gambians, what we know growing up as a young kid over there, if someone was killed, a homicide committed, that's considered big news. We understood theft offenses were on the rise. Here and there, you will hear assault, but grievous bodily injury or even a homicide, that is alarming. And then maybe once in a year, you would hear it. You could grow up in your village, you will never hear about it. But it's becoming too often, every other day on our headlines. Now, I give the police a lot of credit in the sense that most of these homicide, they would have someone apprehended, and then the person will be going through the process. It might take time, but our goal is to make sure police prevent some of this crime, or at least there is enough enforcement to deter people. But it becomes very much for those who are visibly upset, and then for the right reason, that not only are we experiencing homicide, but from their own observation is this is committed by individuals who recently welcome to the country because of our grace, and then instead of reciprocating that, they repay that with crime. No country wants that, and then definitely that would be a problem. So it raised the question, how do we address that? If we are welcoming, we want to bring you in, shouldn't you follow the laws? And if you don't follow the laws, then what became next? So that's why I want the immigration bill to capture that. We have the ECOWAS protocols, free movement of people. I am all up for that. And then we have the our own domestic statute regarding the implementation of the 61 Refugee Protocol. And then it spoke of the Refugee Commission. The problem is, if I were an immigration officer at the border, someone shows up there at the port of entry, and then they don't have any documentation that would even prove that they are from Senegal or neighboring ECOWAS country. What do I do next? If the person claimed that, hey, I just ran away from Senegal, I'm afraid that Mackay would kill me. Well, now, is it Sonko or the other guy? I'm afraid that they are going to put me in jail. We have a refugee statute, and then that also spoke of the refugee commission that should address these issues. It gave an obligation to the immigration officer at the post to recognize that, but it did not tell them the process. So what next? There's a huge disjoint, and then the bill does not address that. Do you do what we call a sworn statement interview to verify whether that claim is reasonable or whether they would meet legal litmus for the requirement under the law before you allow them entry? And then if this person is someone who committed serious crime or confessed to you that I just killed somebody, and then they wanted to arrest me, we have refoulement. Do we detain this guy? Because now it becomes a public interest issue. Or if they have mental, there's all these issues that have not been addressed. And then my frustration is, it's the 21st century. We have an opportunity to take a first step at a major comprehensive immigration bill that should make us safe, because immigration, like it or not, interact fundamentally with national security. And then you have to make sure that I am all up for open borders, but also making vetting. So I want those officers to be empowered, but also the officers to must operate within the ambit of the law. It allowed for indefinite detention, but no one actually check and reconcile that with the Constitution, where it says any person. It doesn't say any Gambian, any person detained for 3 days. So you don't know, okay, if immigration is civil. These are some of the things I want, for our lawmakers to actually think about. I don't want it to be an afterthought where we now have a dangerous criminal. As Justice Cardoso would say, the criminal must go free because the constable blundered. Because the laws never actually thought about it, but everything is an afterthought. We keep reacting with impulse. So that's my frustration. And I want the law to address where we can empower officials to put people under expedited removal. Gambia is, a small country. We don't have the resources. Why detain someone indefinitely, feed them, if we know they have no claim, there's no refoulement, when you can actually process that person at the border and they refuse entry? And then it also used different terminologies. We're not thinking about it. And I know this for a fact because United States made this experience. Some part of the bill will talk about, you entry into the Gambia, but it doesn't talk about admission. There's a distinction between entering a country and lawfully being admitted into the country. Those are two different things, but you're not thinking about all these things. Nene, okay, upstairs, please. So those are the things I want the bill to address, and then just not leave it to happen chance, and then chaos would reign. That was the decision. And then some of the things too. Gambia, every bill that comes in, we have a commission over there. There's a committee over there. Frankly, I think that's getting too much. The reason I bring that up is, while my article did not address it, because that's the list of my concern, but you are looking at the operational cost of that. We have a director of immigration. You have officials. Yet still, we also set up a commission within an immigration department, pay people a lot of money, and then this bill is saying they will have sitting maybe once a month or every quarter, and then you're going to pay them specialized money, per diems or whatever you call it, for doing the job that they are hired. These are some of the things, citizens should scrutinize in National Assembly. Why do I need a commission for immigration? Why can't there be an OPR, Office of Professional Responsibilities or Ethics, within the government where complaints could be filed, could be investigated, rather than every institution having a commission? So these are some of the things, we need to review closely and then address some of these issues. And then if you are going to empower officers to carry a weapon, are they going to have a specialized unit? So some of these things, this is not a constitution, it's actually a bill, a statute. And I want it to be comprehensively addressed where we could have regulations over there. That was my goal. But my goal is to protect those officers at the border, to have the power to operate within the ambit of the law, for there to be a process, and then not have so many laws where there's so much disjoint and then they are not communicating or interacting the way they should be. That was the goal. And then I want them to recognize that, and then I want National Assembly to start thinking about these questions.
Yeah. Omar, before I bring you on quickly, I also think, obviously, National Assembly, they have a significant responsibility in making sure some of these recommendations are reflective or are captured to ensure that we're bringing ourselves and our system of immigration in tandem with what's happening in systems that are working, but they're also human. They protect our sovereignty in many ways. So uh, I'm sure you have questions for Sadio, but how important do you think, Omar, would be for people who have expertise in these areas to also sort of come up, like Sadio did, with recommendations to read these documents to see what areas that they should prioritize, even National Assembly to even host, say, expert or subject matter sessions to invite people to come and share opinions on areas that they are very familiar with. Because again, immigration is a very specialized area. It's not everybody that understands these things. It's not everybody that knows these things. So it may be necessary for them to consider some expert opinions or subject matter experts, as the case may be. But yes, Omar, go ahead.
Yeah, that's very true. I think I have more questions than comments to make. But first, I did not read this specific bill you're talking about. I know whenever we talk about regulations, laws, the popularization and people who know and they're engaging people who have the wisdom to either critique or to help adjust or make them human possible. Is very very much important. One thing I do not know is that Gambia, for the most part, we could just get a project and then feel like there is a need to put up a regulation. But what informs this regulation? Now, what exactly are we trying to address? And what is the approach and what is the methodology? What exactly, is the empirical evidence that we have issues of this and we definitely need to address it? Like we talked about the other day, like I said, even crimes have nationality, even though some people don't agree. But I do know that, your admission into a country, and of course, your status in that country, whatever you do there definitely have a bearing on what that country will determine in either letting you stay or not, either petty or heavy crime. So for me, I think immigration or whatever is happening in the Gambia or those regulations should reflect the realities of the people and not just have, a very fanciful document done which is not reflective of our reality, because our reality on immigration will be very different from other jurisdictions and their realities. So until your instruments or your legal frameworks reflect the realities of your country, and you can only know that through empirical evidence. And that's why I said laws, regulations, and other things, wherever they are to be developed, they should be informed by empirical scientific information. That is to say, this is where we are, this is what the problems are, and this is what we are trying to do to address them. And for me,
Okay.
that's why I believe that either the police or whatever institution, whatever information they have, those informations would be necessary in trying to look at how, government responds to issues of national security. And that includes immigration. Immigration globally is very much interlinked to national security. So, whatever you do, either you are strengthening or you're putting in regulations, they should reflect your national security realities and, of course, your economic realities and how, the people definitely need to live harmoniously in those environments. So, in
Yeah.
general, I have a lot more questions than commentaries.
Yeah.
But to start my questions, what I want to understand from Sajo is, of course, you might have read that document. So what is the wisdom behind this document? It's probably the first of its kind. What exactly is it seeking to address? And what exactly are the major, challenges that we feel need to be addressed in the Gambian context?
Well, I know previously from the immigration, and I stand to be corrected, they did query that they need support and then need to amend the laws in order to allow immigration officials to carry a weapon. And then this will be a specialized unit at the border to help them confront the realities of cross-border crimes. Because
Hmm.
9 out of 10 times they rely heavily on the national army to protect the national borders. So I think that was one of the reasons why this bill was prepared. But if the goal was to address or at least empower immigration officials to bear arm, and then in hindsight they realized that, hey, gee, we have an Immigration Act from 1965. We have not clearly addressed the type of visas, work permit, or the process to get work permit, and things have changed. We want to empower Gambians. That is good. So let us prepare a comprehensive bill that will allow us to address who get to enter in the Gambia, and then what authorities does border patrol officials have to.
Sorry, guys. Sarjo,
Yes.
please go ahead. We had a little interruption.
Okay.
Apologize for
All
that.
right.
Just go
So
ahead.
um, I don't know how much I was online, but basically, I think the goal was to address, the deficiency in immigration officials' reality today, and then how they can bear arm to protect the country, and then also bring to 21st century our immigration laws. Who gets to enter? What type of visas are needed? The categories of visas, and then what power officials have to refuse people. So that was the initial goal, but I guess they decided that, okay, this is an opportunity to create a landmark legislation and then address immigration comprehensively, which is commendable. And then I have to commend the drafters for that initiative, as it should. The problem is, forget about the finance side, where I have more, that could be addressed later, whether we need a commission within immigration and then the controller, all those things. That's just peripheral. We can address that later. The first issue I raised was the bill itself, affirm protection for asylum seekers and the principle of non-refoulement, because we are signatory to the 61 Convention. But the problem is it did not provide a procedure for identifying, recording, referring those protection claims, as I said. So, well, if we are saying we are all up for this, it's like right on paper, but not in practice, just like the whole right to picket and then protest against your government, but it's frustrated by another mechanism. So I don't want the same thing to appear in this area and then tie our hand. And then it also referred to the Refugee Act without establishing any operational break between the officer at the border, as I indicated, and the Refugee Commission. Because the Refugee Act, I had to go review that. It also set up a refugee commission that would determine refugee status for individuals who apply, but it doesn't provide a basis or a break. Someone who arrived at the border is not within the Gambia. How do you claim refugee status? And this is important. How do we know it? 2 days ago, Supreme Court of the United States had to address this precise issue, because the language in our statute says that anyone who arrived in the United States is entitled to make a claim for asylum status, regardless of how you enter the country. Because we have a two-tier system. Refugee are those that are outside the country and then are admitted through resettlement for U.S. purpose. If you are within the four corners of the United States, you are entitled to apply for asylum. So the question rests on the English word arrive. What does it mean to arrive? If I see you coming and I intentionally block you from entering, close the door to avoid you to, apply for a relief the law gave you mandate to, have you arrived in the United States or not? And then the Supreme Court answered no, even if someone, forcefully closed those doors. So it's the same question for Gambia. Well, you are entitled to plead asylum with our refugee commission, but it doesn't tell the border officer how they will operationalize that. Do they take interview? And then the bill also did not give our officers at the border any lawful, way to resolve, the cases quickly at the border. Let's say someone arrived at the border, has no travel document, advances no colorable claim of entry, no lawful status, not a citizen of the Gambia. And then the officials do not have any mechanism to quickly turn around that person and say, no, you cannot enter. So what's the point of the bill? So that's another issue that I thought, should have been addressed there. And then, as I also indicated, it use overlapping concept. Sometimes it will use exclusion. Coming back to United States, before 1997, we have what we call exclusion hearing. People who were not formally given entry to the United States, we call it exclusion and deportation proceeding. But America learned from those mistakes. English language can be very cruel. So 97, they amend the Immigration Act and then now call removal proceeding. You are someone who is either admitted or not. So they are very smart with that. But the act, if you look at it, will tell you prohibited immigrant, inadmissible person, and then use interlocking changes without any reference to them, what it means. So I think those things need to be reconciled. And then sometimes it will tell if you enter the Gambia or the officer can refuse you inadmissible. Well, US used to have that. And then these are choice of word, legal term, entry without inspection. So I can enter the Gambia without actual inspection. So that's why I think those phrases should be very intentional. We use people who are admitted, meaning even if you sneak across the country, without documentary proof, or without being allowed to come in, you're still an applicant who is seeking admission to enter Gambia, regardless of what part of the country you are in. So we need to make sure that protect us in terms of sovereignty. If you wanted to take out dangerous people at a time, those things should be there. The bill also authorized indefinite detention. We don't have the money to even detain the criminal individuals we have, much more someone whose problem would be immigration, which ostensibly I would suppose it's a civil proceeding in order to have more power under the constitution, because it's not criminal, someone is not being tried, it's a civil proceedings. And then yet we ask for indefinite detention that would cost the government a lot of money, but also that raise constitutional questions under our Bill of Rights, Chapter 17, going forward. So these are some of the things I want the National Assembly to think about. And then it does not provide a right of judicial review in cases where people who are actual permanent residents in the Gambia, people who have, let's say, for lack of better word, our green card, or people who, were admitted with a visa, they paid university fee, they're going there, and then you want to remove them. It doesn't give them a recourse to go to a court to review that, whether that's based on the law, especially if they pay substantial amount of money to come to school, their university, because we have to think about this. We want to invite people to come to our universities to study there, to invest in the country. We want all those things to be there. And it also did not give immigration officials the power to detain dangerous individuals who we think they are a danger to the society, or people who are flight risks. And then, or nor does it give them the power to exclude someone who, let's say, has committed a serious human right violation or a national security threat. You can enter the Gambia and then reach our asylum process, and then there is no law that prohibits you from doing so. So these are some of the things I want people to start thinking forwardly, and then we don't want to address it when the issue started. So that's what legislation is about. The unfortunate incident that happened at the university, use that as an opportunity, a position paper. If you have to document crimes, National Assembly could do that. Hey, police, we want to get statistics on all serious crimes that happen in the Gambia. Document them, the nationality, that would inform how you change laws. And then it doesn't mean you use those statistics to be to have a corrupt intent, but it's important to know, well, if you are coming from X country, we will put you in a heightened scrutiny. We want background checks to be more heightened, because traditionally our records support that people coming from there may be flouting the laws. It might be a difficult conversation, but it's good for security measures. Every crime has statistics behind it, overtly or covertly, someone is making those statistics, and then they work from that. That's how policies get built. So that's some of the conversation I want National Assemblies to be thinking about, and then look into these things closer rather than just accepting for what it is.
Thank you very much, Sarjo. Marr, welcome. Hang on 1 minute. Let me just take this down. It's just a lot of interruptions happening on the background studio, so I apologize for that. But yes, Marr, welcome to the show. How are you doing? Sarjo, thank you very much once again for all that detailed explanation. I think we need that. There's a lot of education and learning that needs to happen in this respect, and I think all of us should make it a point to learn and also share our perspectives, because we absolutely need better immigration system in our country, especially to deal with some of the things that we continue to see happen. And just on the last point on that, Sajo, and I would like to shift to Matt a little bit to talk to us about some of the work that they've been doing and their recent press conference that they had on corruption and electricity crisis in Gambia. But specifically, Sajo, the issue of nationality of people that commit crimes is a very controversial subject. And I thought you could also shine a little bit of light on it, since you are in this area, you have a lot of experience in this respect too. Most times when police do this, when they write the nationality of individuals that commit crimes, we know, and Malmo and I debated over this, we still disagree, but Madi made a very important observation to say it is important because the police need these statistics to understand the nationality or the profiles or the nature of the crimes that are being committed and who is committing it and how is this offense being committed. But he also raised an important question, which is what is the point of making that public? What is the essence of it? And so I want to ask you that. Why do you think that mostly the police or this law enforcement does that, to bring the nationality of individuals that commit crimes to public, especially when those individuals are foreign, but when nationalities of those particular countries commit those crimes, the same do not apply?
I mean, probably it's a little bit political too. I expect police to take statistics of every crime to understand their demographic.
Mhm.
It helped them in enforcement. And then I'm speaking from a practical point of view. So those things are important behind the scene.
Yeah.
Why announce it? It depends. There could be a lot of reason, and then I cannot hold brief for the police. I don't know what their motivations are. In certain circumstances, it might be relevant if there is a public outcry claiming that the police feel that to avoid or prevent imminent danger or attack on a population or specific group because people think that they are prone to commit crime, they can come out and be like, hey, while this X crime that is committed by X citizen, we want to assure the community that proportionally, most of the crimes are either native committed or from this group of people. So we don't want you to think that all people from this community are committing crime. That might be relevant at that point, depending on what the goal is. Sometime if the goal is police are trying to do, let's say they're doing night patrol raid, because Gambia, remember, our laws are so friendly. If police wanted to prevent a lot of crime, yesterday I saw images that anti-crime, they're using night patrol. I was like, that's well and good, our ID laws, because our laws are proportionally helpful to the police. They could use it in a lawful way to prevent crime. So if they are coming out to say, look, the crime that has been committed is committed by an ex-national, and then the reason we are bringing this thing up to the public domain is that this individual either enter the country in an unlawful manner or fail to regularize their status, and then we wanted to show why it is important that for people who are in Gambia to make sure you maintain immigration status. Gambia is very easy to stay there in a lawful way, unlike most countries we know in the West. Just go to the police; they would allow you to stay there, especially if you're from West African country. So we want to recreate that people should always be law-abiding, have their immigration document. We are bringing this to light to let you know that if you commit crime and then you are undocumented, not only will we prosecute you, but we'll make sure you get expelled from the country and then you will never enter. Then it will serve a purpose and as a form of deterrent to other public individuals. But if you are making a pronouncement, giving nationalities, and then there's no reasoning behind it, no, you don't have an objective to achieve, it becomes very dangerous because people get charged, loved ones are killed. So you don't want people to improperly use information that you are providing and then you don't provide it in context. That's my quip with it. If you are going to use it for a specific purpose and then qualify it. But I would expect police internally to have statistics of all this information because one, it helps them how they prioritize their limited resources, how you do enforcement, and then how you target people. And it all goes to intel. I keep saying this, Gambia police don't have a lot of resources. But one thing they have, not even Scotland Yard could compete them with, is intel. If they really want to do their job right, they can have intel to do it right. The question is, are they willing to do so? Because Gambia crime gets solved on good old policing, talking to, for lack of better word, whether you want to call it good citizen or snitches, that's how they get information. And then the question is how they utilize that.
Sarjo, I have this question, probably in an American context. Does the Commission of Crime have a significant impact on immigration regulations?
Yes, the Lake and Riley Act. It all came about because of that. And then the Illegal Immigration and Immigration Responsibility Act of 1996, one of the major, most fundamental immigration law that changed American immigration forever. And then it's called policy. Government looked at policies, what's happening, whether good or bad, whether we do it with fear. Now, I am all up for studying patterns. I am all up for changing policies, but don't do it because you are afraid. Look at it and then we're like, you can still achieve what you want to achieve, but follow a process. I don't want people to have unfettered power where they don't have to answer to it. There has to be some kind of check and balances. We can be welcoming at the same time, make sure that if you're a dangerous individual, it's not going to be a safe haven for you. And then both things could be true at the same time. So for me, we can strengthen security and still be welcoming.
Yeah. Mar, we're going to shift a little bit to you, and we wanted to check in the latest press conference that you did that focused a lot on the recent power outage in the Gambia with electricity. And part of what came out of your press conference is this is a result, certainly, of several years of leadership failure, marred by several questions of corruption and corruptible activities with our electricity company, NOEC. So, talk to us about what are some of the findings that you know so far, and why is this NOEC problem so persistent? And what can we do collectively to ensure that this doesn't continue to happen? Because it's been almost over a month now, and there are still power problems in the Gambia. By the way, for those of you who don't know, Marr is the executive director of Gambia Participates and does a lot of work in the country in terms of civil society as well. So, Marr, we wanted to check in with you on that pretty quick. If you may come in, please.
I see Malmo smiling. Malmo, this is not your small boy.
The funny thing is when I look at this kid, it's funny, but I'm very happy. I'm so proud of him. That's all. That's all I gotta say.
Don't bring the kid conversation on this platform. Myself and Malmo, we go long. I mean, way back. But hello to Ibrahim, Sarjo, and my good brother, elder brother for that matter, Malmo. Uh, Rama, I mean, it's crazy, right? What is happening with Nawak, and um, before I actually even get to talk about Nawak issue, uh, let me speak in the voice of businessmen or business practitioners in the country, right? Every single business establishment in the Gambia, they are legally obliged to pay a 27% profit tax, if you may, right, to the national government, right? In addition to that 27% that they're supposed to pay to the government, there are other charges, like they have the environment levy and then also the education levy that they get to pay. So between April to about May, we have been experiencing power load shedding. Most of these businesses are not doing well compared to last fiscal year at the same period. Now, these businesses, they are not going to get tax waiver. The government is actually going to charge them to pay that 27%. So if you're a Gambian business and you're making about $10 million, it means you're going to be paying $10 million. You're going to be paying like what, 2.7 million dollars to the state, right, as tax. So you have that tax obligation, but then you also have the obligation from the government side to provide you with the infrastructure, the enabling environment for your business to thrive. And one of those enabling environment infrastructure is to have reliable and affordable electricity. We don't have a reliable electricity during this past couple of weeks. And then also electricity is also not cheap. We are one of the most expensive we have one of the most expensive electricity tariff in West Africa, if not around the world. So you look at this difficult position that the business people find themselves, right? And now let's look at the other side of the spectrum. So once the government collects these taxes, they're supposed to form a budget, because most part of our revenue goes to domestic. I mean, is actually formed by the domestic taxes that the government receives, in addition to obviously the other fees and grants and budget support that they also receive from multilateral partners. But let's focus on the domestic taxes that the government receives. If these businesses pay their 27% profit to the government, the government is supposed to use that revenue to form their, or should I say, influence their budget programs. However, if you look at our budget program, you get to see most of these taxes that have been received from our businesses, the government get to sit in the parliament and decide where this money goes to. And majority of this money, where does it go to? It goes to recurrent expenditure, where you are paying the allowances, the per diem, and the procurement of expensive and luxury cars to ministers. But where are the businesses that get to pay this 27%? Where is the enabling environment that you're supposed to create for them? When they are the one funding government programs, when they are the one funding government operations, when they are the one paying individuals that is supposed to give them this enabling environment. There is no electricity, but the money that this business is supposed to pay, they continue to pay. So the government has a moral sacred duty on not only in business, I mean not only citizens, but also the private sector. So if there is no electricity in this country, businesses are not working. Most staff are actually going to be furloughed. The revenue that the government is supposed to collect, or their estimated revenue, tax revenue, they might actually not collect that in 2026 because of most businesses are not expecting, or they are not collecting the revenue that they're supposed to collect because of the electricity outage. So what is the root cause of all of this problem? It's not a mere talk that you were given. This is the government itself with its state-owned enterprises in 2024. June, July 2024, they inspected NAWEC, and they informed NAWEC that it's not sustainable that you keep depending on independent power producers. Number one, they're expensive. Number two, you're paying them on foreign currencies, and the foreign currencies, most of the foreign currencies that we trade in are actually outplaying and outweighing the Gambian dollar. And most importantly as well, you also have generators that you should keep up and running and maintenance, but you don't get to maintenance them. So when the president actually came out and said there are generators that we are not even turning on, he was right. They were not turning on those generators because NAVEC did not maintenance them. They were not turning on those generators because those generators were dead and they were supposed to be maintained. They didn't do that. So they leave the heavy lifting on these independent power producers, and then we pay more expensive electricity to these IPPs. Now, recently you also saw the communication from NAWEC board, which has been approved that the government is giving them $166 million to buy about 75 megawatts from Senelec. Obviously, NAWEC is going to continue to run on deficit because last year year before last, I guess, they run about $3.1 billion on losses, right? And this year they're actually going to be running on losses. What is not being said and discussed is NAWEC has not yet come out and then inform the people how they're going to recoup that money. Number one. Number two, they are not going, if they plan to actually increase the tariff, they are not going to do it now because we are in an election year and the government is not going to accept that. But if this government gets to be re-elected, there are high possibility that if we do not restore our electricity or power sovereignty, NAWEC is actually going to increase tariffs and citizens are going to pay more in addition to this higher electricity tariff that we actually experience. So if you are to sum up all of this, what I actually realized in this system is that you have people that have been appointed to do us the simple thing, which is to just wake up, get to job, and fix the system that has been broken for so long. They have not been doing that. They have not been fixing the problem. They've been focusing more on connectivity, connecting households to the grid, which is very important. But what is connectivity without access to that electricity? It doesn't make sense at all. In fact, the revenue that NAWEC is also supposed to generate, they are not going to get that revenue because people are not going to buy cash power, number one. Number two, most importantly, most businesses have now made NAWEC their backup, their plan B source of energy. They've invested millions of dollars into renewable energy, and some have also bought generators. So instead of depending on NAWEC, they have shifted to renewable energy. So that also means revenue loss to NAWEC, right? So now, what have they done with all of these negligence and corruption at NAWEC? They have done the easiest thing. That is, there's a problem. Number one, they didn't fix the generators. Number two, they did not work on their vision to regain electricity sovereignty and they make electricity affordable and accessible to Gambians. They've resorted to independent power producers, the IPPs, to produce and supply them with this expensive electricity to Gambians. And in addition to all of that problem, they could not fix the existing problem, and now they have to ask for additional money to buy more electricity from Senegal. I don't want to downplay that. I heard someone saying even New York they get to receive their electricity from Canada.
Canada. Hmm.
If Canada is one of the great, New York actually come back strong and within
Yeah.
maybe a couple of hours. Can you do that? You can't.
Yeah.
You understand? So
Hmm.
there's this what Yajame used to call this lackadaisical attitude, this lazy attitude that is with us or with our public officials. So you could not do the simple job to fix the problem, and now you're exposing us to more risk and you are giving more money to pay. The message here is they don't know how to fix this problem and they're forcing it on us, the citizens. Number one, we have endured hardship during this period, no electricity, the heat, mosquitoes filling our house due to lack of ventilation, right? In addition to that, our taxes that we are paying that is supposed to come back to us and make our life better is being used to bail out NAWEC, from their negligence, to bail out NAWEC from their incompetence, to bail out NAWEC from the corruption. We have to look at the root causes of all of this. Today, if you are talking, we said, oh, these kids, they're just complaining. No, we are not complaining. These issues, we've raised this 5 years ago. The government itself raised this couple of years ago. NAWEC didn't do anything about it. And it's the same trajectory that we've seen and experienced at the Gambia ferry service. How many times did the ferry slip through the ocean?
Yeah.
In 2024, between January to April, the Kanilai ferry failed, the engine failed in the ocean more than 10 times. Nothing happened. In 2013, the Kanilai ferry also slipped through the ocean for about 24 hours. There was an instant that just recently, I mean, this administration, an individual died in the ferry. So all of this, while the signals and the red flags have been raised, they didn't get to do anything about it. So what they end up doing is to go and buy a new ferry. The simplest thing, but not to fix the system. The system is you have a ferry that was bought, the
Hmm.
Kundakinda ferry, 2020. I guess we had it about 2019 or so. That engine has a lifespan of what, about 10 years, 5 to 10 years. It didn't even last for 2 years. They had to go and then buy another engine. And from audits, we have learned that when they are given money to go and procure engines, they don't get to buy the right engines for the ferry. And as a result, these ferries keep experiencing engine failure.
Yeah. Uh, we'll come back to that a little bit. Mar, sorry. Thank you very much for breaking that down for us because I think again that is extremely important, and you are one of those few individuals and your civil society that bring a lot of attention on issues that most people don't investigate to know every tiny bit and details of the nuances of it. So, and that's one of the significance of having you on a show like this is to break it down for people to understand that look, what's happening at Nawek when it comes to the power crisis is not just today. I've always said to people for as long as I've known myself, I've always experienced power crisis in the Gambia. It's either you have power for a couple of hours in the Gambia and then for a while it's also out. But also we must acknowledge there are instances where but there were times that it was somewhat stable, but it was never like this normal, like say in most societies where having power is so normal that you don't think about it because it's just like it's always going to be there, right? But that's not the case in our context. But Mr. Melvin Roberts, welcome to the show. It's good to see you again. How are you doing? Oh, Melvin is muted. Melvin, are you with us? Mel, Melvin, are you with us? We can't hear you. I don't know why I can't. Mel, I can't. I mean, I can see you talking, but I can't hear you. Sadio, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. So it's probably Melvin's end. Melvin, could you perhaps just exit and come back on? Maybe that will fix the issue. Mel? So we'll try to proceed. Sajo, I wanted to also check with you on the issue of the recent divorce case before Justice Jada in the Gambia. And it has sparked a lot of conversation in the Gambia. You know, a lot of people have taken sides. Some men not so happy because they're suspecting that, you know, you marry somebody now, you acquire property, even when the property is entirely yours, and then you go to court after separation, you get to share that property with your spouse or your now divorced wife. I think there's a lot of conversation that needs to be had and lots of awareness as well for people to understand what that entails. But you've also written an op-ed on this and try to shine light on our Gambian context, what the Gambian law says, but also what your understanding is in terms of what Justice Jada said. Also comparing that to what happens elsewhere, say in Washington State, for example. So talk to us about that a little bit. What is involved in when two people get married and they get separated and they get married through a civil law in the Gambia, and there is a contestation of the properties after separation. Um, Talk to us about that. I think will be helpful for most people to understand what your article really involves.
Oh, thank you. But listening to Mr. Nyang, I think that's more of a relevant conversation. Division of property is the least of our problem in Gambia. I mean, we are all literally poor, so I don't know why we are fighting each other on what to share anyway. The impact of NAWEC, as he explained, I'm trying to have it registered, and then I have more questions than answers. And then I sincerely hope Gambia is not a litigious country, and then I like it as part of that, but it also doesn't mean that we don't have to keep people accountable. That's the part I wish the conversations get focused on issues rather than personalities, this whole ism that divide us. And then what Marr is bringing to light. These are the kind of conversations the citizens should be having, engaging in. You disagree with him, bring facts, bring resources. Because these are the questions, these are the kitchen table conversation in an election year people should have. Well, NAWEC is in red, they are underwater, and then one of two things will happen. We don't expect them to file bankruptcy. So how do you cover light come January or after that? Will the system be fixed? Is there a goal? And then why are things, that's the part, I keep telling people that I don't know whether in our past life we killed some prophet or a messenger that was passing through Gambia, and then we are feeling that cost. No, I genuinely sometimes think that unknowingly, because they said over 124,000 prophets. Some of them, we only know about 25 messengers. But what I want to understand is put Gambians anywhere outside Gambia. They excel. Sometimes I ask myself, I looked at with utmost respect, we have the brightest economists everywhere. 2007 found me in this country, and I know what we came out of. In Detroit, people will literally surrender their home with a key to the bank during that meltdown, right? And then Timothy Gardner came in the Obama administration. These are not men, I know they studied economics, they're good, but we have Gambians who went to Harvard, the Oxfords, the Yales, economic doyens in internet. Why can they sit and then tell us, for macroeconomics, I don't know anything over there, but this is the problem, and this is how we fix it in 5 years. I'm not saying it's going to be perfect, but I want a diagnosis and tell us that this is the issue. And then with this right attitude, we can turn it around. That's what I want to see. And I never seen that with our experts. And then that's the part where I don't know whether it's the country, love for country, or what the issue is. That's something I really, really want to find out. And then I commend institutions like Gambia Participates that are forcefully asking for answers. Our culture, our deen, sometimes Islam is politics in the sense that, we want to propagate our religion and then what's right in the right way. So everything you don't have to be partisan, but you have to be highly political. That's what Gambians, and I want Gambians to be like this. And then support institution and then just don't question it as Western ideology or no. What is he saying? This actually benefits you. Imagine having a stable electricity, like all the roads that have been built in Gambia. That will make connection much easier. I traveled from Combo to the upcountry. Came the same day, visited many places, to pay my respect to loved ones that passed. How that was made easy. The same thing, we want electricity to be that way. Can you imagine the telecenters? India thrive, because I know for this, in the industry I'm in, they have a lot of call centers over there. There are many Gambians now that are moving towards these Gen Zs that are moving towards, hybrid work. Can you imagine if Gambians have the ability to go to their home country, work 3 months online over there, and then the income they're generating? These are the conversations people should be having with these politicians. Tell us how you fix this soft infrastructure, the intangibles. We are seeing the tangibles. Now we want to talk about the intangible. And then
Lost Sarjo for a second. Sarjo, are you with us? Sarjo? Well, maybe we'll have Sarjo right back. But Marr, are you here?
Sure, I can hear you.
Yes. So also, Marr, when it comes to NAWEC, obviously, I think the last audit report has it that there were a lot of financial irregularities that happened, or funds that could not be accounted for. And the last time that I think the finance minister appeared before the National Assembly Select Committee, he was asked about some of these things, and I think some of the funds still there is no way he could explain where those funds are, or whether there were any plans to actually recover some of those funds. And so I'm curious to ask you, what's the significance of audit reports if we're unable to hold ourselves accountable when public money cannot be accounted for? Because I feel like that's a big issue that we're having in the Gambia right now. Audit reports come out, it's just like another normal document, nobody cares, and then the minister will go to the assembly and give some reason or some excuse as to why nothing has been done about people to be held accountable.
Well, it's crazy, right? When it comes to Namek, it's just not like millions just get to lost in thin air. We're talking about billions of dollars that are underreported. So the latest audit report that we have for NAVEC is 2021. And the auditors, and this is not like the National Audit Office, this was done by a private audit firm, because it was outsourced to that private audit firm on behalf of the National Audit Office. So they did their audit, and they found out that NAWEC was underreporting the cash power revenue. So NAWEC reported that they had about 242,000 active meters, right? And this was in 2020, 2021. And they reported that the total revenue from these active meters was about $3 billion. Now, the auditors did their own mathematics. They calculated using NAVEC's own data, right? If you were charging citizens per kilowatt this amount of money, and then you have about 242,000 active meters, there's no way that you are going to receive 3.3 billion. You should actually be receiving $4.4 billion. So where is the $1.1 billion? They underreported that. In addition to that, right, what the auditors also got to realize is today, if NAVEC actually gets to make $12 million from cash power sale, so this is a daily cash power sale. People walk into cash power centers and then buy cash power. Let's say they get to make $12 million a day. The next day, when they're supposed to bank that in any of the banks that they are banking with, the auditors get to realize that at the point of sale, the $12 million that they have recorded, when it comes to the reconciliation with the amount that has been deposited at the bank, there are huge discrepancies. So every day, millions of dollars get lost. At the end of the year, multiplied by 365, you get billions of dollars is lost. And that's why auditors also get to realize that you are underreporting your cash power revenue by $1.1 billion. Where did that
That's
$1.1 billion
insane.
go?
That is actually really crazy.
And this is 2021. As of 2026, on NAVEC's website, they have reported that they got over 350,000 active meters. And 2023, they have increased the electricity tariff. So 2021, if you were scoring $3.3 billion, right? Since 2021 to date, NAWEC has not made any profit except in 2025. And this is what I want to actually debunk. NAWEC did not make profit in 2025. NAWEC was indebted. They could not pay their debt, just like what the government is currently doing now using taxpayers' money. The government did the same thing by investing about 164 million or somewhere around that. If I can quote, I stand to be corrected. But it was in millions of dollars that was paid in May 2025 to bail out NAWEC from the debt that they owe to Car Power. So obviously, if you are indebted and you have an external hand that come in and bail you out, right? Now the extra money that you get, you're going to report that as revenue and profit, actually. So they were not running on profit, they were running on losses. They're running on losses because it is intentional. They don't want to make profit. If they want to make the profit, they would fix the leakages that they have. Now, at least they have incorporated fintech organizations. So hardly do I see people going to cash power vendors. They get to use either Wave or their bank account. For those that do not have those luxury, they get to go to the closest NAWEC cash power vendor. So this whole problem is systematic in a sense that there has been massive unchecked corruption at NAWEC. And I think if I was in the president's position, I would have done different. Because when the president came out, he was basically on the defense side of NAWEC to say this is just a mere technical problem, because that's what he was told. And maybe he just wanted to trust them because he put them in office. He was told that it's a mere technical problem, or the countries, Senegal and others, are also experiencing problem. So he went with that. If I was in his position, I would have done differently. I will go to the 2021 audit report and see what actually happened. I will go back to the SOE's report in 2023, 2024, and 2025 and see what the SOEs has reported. I will also go back to when the SOE invited the NAWEC stakeholders, and actually the SOEs went to the office of the president, presented their report, and imposed a 5% sanction on the senior management of NAWEC because of their underperformance. So this was done right at the office of the president. The SOE reported that NAWEC underperformed, so we are going to impose a 5% sanction on their salaries, and that was just recently. And they actually even reported that if they continue to underperform, we are going to make recommendation to your office and recommend that all of this senior management at NAWEC be fired because they have been underperforming. And that's exactly what is happening. That's what is happening. Although they have not made that recommendation, but that's what is happening. So if I was in the present position, I would not be at the defensive. NAWEC has cost this country billions of dollars between April to date. Factories are not producing as they used to. Restaurants are not generating revenue as they expected. Bakeries are not baking. Barber shops are not working. And most of these businesses, they have not increased their prices, even though they are using this fuel from the gas stations, which is very expensive. They've maintained their prices. So NAWEC put us in this difficult problem. It is not Ukraine-Russia war. It is not the Israel and Iran war. They are part of the factors, right? But before the war, NAWEC has been in serious crisis, and that's what we need to talk about. Not to just look at. We should not be myopic to look at the recent happenings. We should look at the root causes of the problem. So I guess this is what people need to understand, that it is not a technical problem. It's a systematic problem at NAWEC level, filled with negligence and corruption.
Thank you. Sarjo is frozen. His internet today has been tripping, but I'm gonna try to readmit him. Hopefully, he comes back on. So, Marr, when it comes to NAWEC, though, what do you think is the way forward? Because certainly, NAWEC just seems like a failed institutional project for the most part. I don't think there is no other way for us to call it. And Sarjo, I don't know what's happening with your internet today, man.
That's why I'm a little bit surprised. I don't know whether it's me or, but I may have to check that later. But I see I have been going in and out.
Yeah.
And then thankfully, if I'm in Jollof, I would have blamed Nawek. But this is me.
Yeah, but yes, before I ask, what's the way forward when it comes to electricity? You were reacting to Mar's comments or analysis on the situation with Nawek, and I thought you could continue from there, and then maybe also, I mean, extrapolate a little bit on the legal question that I asked you earlier. Then maybe we can figure out a way forward. What should we do? Because now it just seems like a failed institutional project. I don't know if it's going to be able to be viable going forward with all the problems that it has. But yes, by all means, go ahead.
No, I think it can be viable. Whether that will require, one thing I learned during my stay, I'm talking to this young attorney, a lot of young professionals in Gambia that actually want to do the right thing. And then we are talking, and then she was telling me some of the cases they were handling, insolvencies and others. And I was like, oh, gee, I didn't know bankruptcy is lit in Gambia. So I inquired further. Did you guys learn that at law school or at bar school? Like, no, but it's a practice area over there. Mm-hmm. So to Mark's point, yes, either we change it, whether we are going to restructure it or find it insolvent, those options are there. I think the question become the will, the political will. And then I don't know how lawful it would be. Personally, if I'm within the cabinet, I would have object to salary variation. If the management is not performing as they should, and then we are paying you to do a job, you do PIP, and then if you can salvage them, fire them. That's the point. But we're not going to vary your salary and then create another legal liability in our hand, unless if it is expressively indicated in the statute, because the salary was not contingent on performance. These are public, even though it's a state-owned enterprise, these are public civil servants. So you cannot just do that. You can't vary their salary. And then this is my problem with Gambia. We keep doing things, follow the process, and you will get the results right. Mm-hmm. They are not doing what they are hired to do. Fine, bring someone in to do it. But to a greater point, I think I had this conversation with young people, and I think the country ought to focus and then support the Ministry of Justice, Attorney General chambers, any incumbent government or recent government, so to understand that that's not just a law firm. This whole idea, Attorney General, it's not a law firm. That's our national institution. And then within that institution, if that office is equipped and then working as it should, to Mar's point, most of these things will be self-addressed. Because in any Ministry of Justice, go to any country, you'll have a national security unit. You'll have a public integrity unit. You have their human rights unit. These are all seasoned prosecutors who go after public graft. And then the carriers get make out of this. These are the kind, like if this or these results come out, they will be all over it. And then another thing that has to change in Gambia in order to keep people accountable, there's this whole disjoint that we inherit from the Brits. Police are entirely responsible for investigation. And then I couldn't find any subsidiary legislation like the Attorney General's office. The Attorney General should be and is the chief law enforcement officer in any country. Yet we have this mismatch where they don't have an investigatory power. Police investigate and then somehow bring you to tell you what to do. Mm-hmm. That is just absurd. That has to change, and it must change. Because otherwise, if there is some kind of contention or resentment between those two institutions, they can frustrate your effort. The Ministry of Justice should have the power to investigate, start any investigation. The police should be answerable to the Ministry of Justice to help them in their investigation. In fact, when they finish investigation, every Ministry of Justice should be equipped with internal investigators that will investigate those investigators. That's how do I know that? I am a line prosecutor with, like some of the things I know, the resources we have at our disposal when I was doing that at a previous part of my life. You call them and tell them, this is what I need. This is what I want. But it's only in Gambia, you hear quote unquote, we send it to the Ministry of Justice for legal opinion. And then they were like, oh, this file is deficient, investigate more. No. So a lot has to change. And then not because we don't have the human capital is there. We have some issues with human capital, but we also need training and then the courage to change things, to shake it up, to understand that some things are not working, we need to change it. But it will require what I call political will everywhere across the board. Even you have the political will, the systems must change, you have to reform, and then you have to be a maverick about that. So, but I think hopefully we can get there if we start talking about issues rather than personalities. Gambians, we have more in common that bind us than what divide us. This whole nonsense, when we are using this ism, tribes, and others, it's just a tactic to put us behind. It's just, all wine in a new bottle kind of thing. It worked during the colonialism, neo-colonial period. We have to rise above that and understand that, look, we are together and then we need changes. I may not like you, but if I see something is wrong, I have to speak against that. So I think that's where the focus should be on that. And then hopefully something get done regarding that. But I think it can change, or if we think it's not functioning, dismantle it, build something. Let it be a national debt, but every one part of that problem, remove them, fire them, build something new, and then we fix that. We are going to cut our losses, but we cannot continue to imagine if this is a business. What kind of investor would continue to invest in that kind of business?
Yeah.
Running on losses all the time. So if it doesn't work, cut it, rebuild it, do something. We cut our losses and then we move on. But I am not an energy expert, and I know young Gambians who are doing energy here. I have conversations with them. Those are the people, I encourage them. And then my point is, it's about time now, Gambians who everyone should stay in their lane, experts in that area to speak out. And then if something comes up and then you feel like it doesn't make sense, speak about it, educate us, and let us know whether those statements hold true or make sense. And then when you critic, also give us recommendation. These are policy prescription. Whether someone follow it or not, it will be there for posterity. Tomorrow you cannot claim or feign ignorance. That's the whole point to that. But I think that's an important enlightenment I received from Marr for that matter. And then to pivot, if I'm segueing to your other point, I think the reason I wrote about it, because there's a lot of hullabaloo about it. And then the whole point about that, I think, in fact, I'm of the view, the position, like knowing what I know in Gambia. I know this is controversial. Gambia would be a community property state. Now, I know religion comes first, and then we all subject ourselves to the dictate of that. And I appreciate that arrangement. But to the extent that people choose to have a civil marriage, I think we should move into a community property law. 50-50. It doesn't matter what a marriage certificate should be enough to divide those assets, because you get into that to build something together. If you don't trust it, don't do it. Form a trust. But this decision is only relevant to those people that opt out. You have to officially opt out, because by default, if you get married under the Islamic system or Qadi system, the decision doesn't affect you because of Article 7 of the Constitution. We make those derogations with those rights and then whatnot. But I think the analogy is most people misunderstood the judgment as announcing that Gambia, if spouses get divorced, it doesn't matter whether a wife or husband, there's an automatic 50-50. No, that was what I was trying to set state. The Women Act was very helpful. And then to put a little bit of perspective in history, for those who are old enough to understand, under common law, this concept called coverture, where once a wife is married, you disappear, your legal identity disappear, you
can't own property.
Yeah, so you can't own property, everything. In fact, even for passport in some country, your husband has to sign off in order to get that. That's how it used to be. So that was a legal disability. It started in England under that common law system. England was quick to fix it in the 19th century.
Sarjo is gone.
While he's gone, I just want to take this opportunity to quote the exact amount. I think I mentioned about 100 and something million US dollars that the government received, that that NAWEC received as a bailout from the government, but the actual amount is 19.4 million US dollars, which corresponds to 1.4 billion dollars. So that was the bailout from the car power agreement.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Yeah, thank you, Marr. Sarjo, please proceed.
Yeah, sorry, I know for some reason my internet is acting improperly. But what I was trying to point out is that was the issue there. England fixed that disability with the Married Women Amendment Act to give women the power to do so. And then Gambia, we inherited the concept, but we never cured that disability with it, right? So the 97 Constitution came, and then also cover these religious exceptions for Muslim, but it still did not address expressively women's right to and property. Now, my contention would have been the equal protection in the constitutional framework for those that are married in civil law, and then should protect them, but it wasn't clear. It would still be subjected to interpretation. So the Women Amendment Act, that's what it did. What it did, it gives status to women, the ability for the first time legally to own property. And then when they amended it in 2021, it went a little bit further because probably it saw a gap over there. Maybe that women, most of the time, they are homemakers. And then that's a form of contribution. So if they are homemakers, they are contributing to the marriage. We wanted to make sure that get recognized in our system where if there is property division, because Gambia is not a community property state, where like Wisconsin, my home state, California, state like those, Washington, where if you get married, a marriage certificate is enough. It's a status state where you get division of property 50-50. It's called marital property. Everything gets divided 50-50 regardless. Anything acquired during the life of marriage. So that goes to timing. Any property acquired during marriage, divide 50-50. It doesn't matter the manner in which it was acquired. But Gambia law mirrors a contribution, and it has two prongs. One, the property that must be divided must be derived from the marital union. And then two, you have to prove there is some form of contribution to it. So how do you prove someone contributed to a marriage, especially for female where they are homemakers? That's why the statute lists several factors a judge must consider, like if they raise your children, if the joint enterprise where you are building your house and then they help you build it, bring in material or bucket of water or whatever, have you not. Those kind of contributions will account. The question the law leaves open is how much of those contributions should we care for? And then that's a call a judge will make. The law doesn't say contribution, you contribute automatically 50-50. They will look at that contribution and percentage that contribution to that property. My point is the law requires you still to prove. When I put receipt, most people don't understand. Just because you are married, you're raising kids, doesn't automatically mean that you contributed. That's a factor the judge has to look at. But because you are an applicant, the burden is on you. And then this is where most people may have misunderstood. As I always say, there's a difference between paper law and trial law. You don't walk into a courtroom and say, well, we have three kids and then I'm the mother taking care of the kids. That's enough. No, it's a burden-proofing system. You have to document that you actually raised those children. You contribute to rearing those children. How do you prove that? It might be through your own oral testimony if the court finds you credible. It might be witnesses, grandparents, or neighbors who would say that we always see this woman taking care of the kids. She's the one changing them, taking them to school teachers. That's what you have to prove. When I said receipt, it doesn't mean you physically have to show receipt. My contention is there has to be a rebuttable presumption built in this statute. If you are married, you have kids, and then you have a wife who is a homemaker, the presumption is the wife has contributed to raising that child. They don't have to prove it. It should be presumed, unless the other party who don't want that to count can rebut that. No, just because she's a mother, she never raised those kids. I raised them. That's what I was calling for. Okay. So there is that distinction, because unless you actually try cases in court, you wouldn't understand that those distinctions. Just because something could be a factor doesn't mean the burden is not on you to actually prove that. But I don't want women to have proof that. This law should have gone a little bit further and presume that they've already contributed.
Yeah.
Unless someone wanted.
Yeah. And that's what I wanted to ask you about. What happens in that instant case, for example, that Justice Jada presided over, if that woman do not have, material evidence to prove that she materially contributed to building that house, for example, then she gets to forfeit all of that because she cannot prove by sort of evidence to say that, or she doesn't have received, as we've seen in the other part of the judgment that came out. So what happens then in instances like that if there is no material evidence to support that, in fact, she contributed?
She would have lost. In fact, Justice Jett's decision is correct. I like the decision. Most people don't even understood. If you think the decision was favorable to the wife, she actually lost 2 other claims. There's another property in, I forget the name of the place. I don't
That's
know,
what I'm saying.
Kumasi
Yes.
somewhere.
Yes.
He lost that because he could not prove that she contributed to that property.
Yes.
And then the monetary contribution to she asked about 280 something thousand. She lost on that claim because he could not prove any contribution. So this other one, she was able to prove contribution because he was physically going to the site of the land, contributing, and then she actually brought in a witness who the court found credible to show. And then, in fact, the husband conceded that much, which is very important. At least we have to give credit to the husband. He was honest enough and then not lying that, yes, when I was building this property, we built it as a home. It's supposed to be our home.
Yeah.
So he conceded that much. And then the wife also said, yes, I was the one going, talking to the contractors, making sure the, building material, buying stuff. And then a witness came and then, corroborated that account of hers. And then the problem was, Justice Jaidet, to his credit, I don't want to call it a rookie mistake, but he looked into equity. That was good. The attorney asked for a specific amount, and then they could not prove the value of the home. That was a fatal mistake. You don't want to what Justice Jade did, in a sense, he did not consider a law to be a sporting theory of justice. Decide with the most point win. He actually looked into fairness. He was like, look, I know you contributed, but neither party provided sufficient evidence to know what the value of the property is in order to determine what the contribution is. So this is what I'm going to do. You sell it for $10, your business, each one get $5. You sell it for $1 million, it's good for you. So he did not assign a number value, which was, very commendable and then very fair to protect each side's interests. Because otherwise, what if you, the lawyer made a mistake and then inflate the prices, and then you couldn't support it, and then the judge issued that monetary value, you could literally put the other guy underwater. What if the property never reached to that value, if it gets sold? So that's why you need to know the type of request you make towards the court. You could ask for a petition of the property, which would be nice, sell it, and then we know what the value is. And then, because Gambia, oftentimes, my opinion is, when it comes to bail, how property values all of a sudden, the amount that is gets set to secure bail for property values would not be the true value if you sell it for a fair market value in the system. So those things are there. But the decision was correct. The problem is the way how it was framed, and then how people understood it is, become a little bit more alarming. At first, I ignored it, but it has been amplified. And then my fear was, if left unchecked, you don't want it to be a source in a union. Maybe that's on a shaky ground, thinking that the law give you an out, or you misunderstood the law. The decision reinforced the principle that's already recognized, but it's more limited to this party. It's not in any sense that I would say a huge departure in the law. It basically says what the law is right now. And then it affects this party to that extent. So it's not like a fundamental change in law. This is not a judicial decision that announced, where in the absence of a statute, it would have been very significant if this decision claimed that, or the Women Act was not there, and then claim that by virtue of the Constitution, coverture will not be recognized in the Gambia, and then wife has a capacity to own property, and then if they are in a marriage and any property acquired from that marriage will be divided, it will be a significant jurisprudence movement. The statute is already there. The law spoke of it. He just enforced the law. He just gave teeth to that to that law.
Yeah. So on the last issue, on the subject of corruption, Marr, and Sarjo also wrote about it, so I think it will be a good point for both of you to share ideas on, which is, the Anti-Corruption Commission. The government of the Gambia has made a pronouncement that they've withdrawn the candidacy of Almami James Manga on allegations of corruption. And I think, Sarjo, you made a brilliant analysis on it to say that I think we should have followed the process since his confirmation came through the National Assembly. National Assembly at least should also have the opportunity to establish, or otherwise these allegations that are put against Almami James Manga. So, Marr, I want to talk to you because, again, you do a lot of work in this respect. What is the state of the Anti-Corruption Commission? Where are we? And what does this also mean in terms of where we go from here? with questions of credibility for the institution and its work, since it's been talked about for such a long time that it's coming, it hasn't still arrived, it's not still here, and questions around the appointment of individuals who are involved in it as well, but also not following the process in terms of ensuring that even though allegations are put against other people, we have to follow the process that is put in place to for the purposes of transparency and public trust as well.
So right, the Anti-Corruption Commission is still the law, although has been passed on December 21st, 2023. The execution of the law remained on a standstill because the commission is actually not in place. And the law, I guess, for it to be executed, we need to have the anti-corruption commissioners. And the anti-corruption commissioners, by virtue of the Anti-Corruption Act, they have to be in odd numbers and a maximum of 3. So there was an open call for applications, so people applied, and I guess the reported numbers was about 100, not 100, but almost 100 applications, and they got to shortlist the most outstanding applicants, and I think they narrowed it down to 12-8. And at the National Assembly, based on the recommendation, they get to confirm the 3 anti-corruption commissioners. And this was in December 2025. From January to April, I guess, we did not get to hear anything from, or May, we did not get to hear anything from the government regarding the swearing in of the anti-corruption commissioners. So we decided to write to the office of the president and demand explanation why the delay in the swearing in of anti-corruption commission, because the only thing that was standing between Gambians and a credible anti-corruption commission is the president's office swearing in those confirmed National Assembly members. So this was in May, and recently we also did a press conference to talk about these issues until we got to hear the explanation from the vice president that the delay is because of the allegation that is surrounding one of the confirmed commissioners, Almami James Manga. And he also made it clear that there are no evidence that he has been found guilty of corruption. It's just an allegation.
Yes.
The precedent that this government has said is that whenever there is allegation of corruption, they get to investigate. They get to establish a board of investigation or an inquiry that will investigate and present their report to the president. It's not the case, right,
In
with the
Almama's
Anti-Corruption
case.
Commission. It's just an allegation.
Excuse me.
So whether the government is using that as a tactic to further delay the establishment of the Anti-Corruption Commission, because now the replacement will also mean that they will have to look back at the alternatives. So if you get the 3 best from the about 100 applicants, you get the 3 best. Now you're looking for an alternative, meaning you're looking for someone else that is below the standard of the ones that have already been confirmed. Because if they were not below that standard, then they would not have been dropped, right? Except if they do another open call for application, which is going to take another time, and National Assembly is also going to confirm the process. So we are not looking at by the end of this 2026. I am not sure the Anti-Corruption Commission is going to be established. And I've shared it not long ago that there are a series of events that convinced me that the government is literally not interested in the establishment of the Anti-Corruption Commission. Because number one, before all this, since last year, the National Assembly has been putting in money, appropriating money or budget in the Appropriation Act 2025-2026 for the operationalization of the Anti-Corruption Commission. Nothing has not been done from the government to expedite the process. Now that we are here, you have the opportunity to now swear them in. You receive allegation, and then you said, okay, because of that, we're going to drop you because of the sensitivity of the Anti-Corruption Commission, which I totally understand as well. If you don't want any iota of doubt on the commissioners that they have to be persons of integrity and free of corruption, what should have been done was to investigate that one or many of the confirmed confirmed anti-corruption commissioners are guilty of corruption. In the absence of that, it's going to be termed as politics or something that is personal or a personal vendetta against that said person. Why is it not done for other officers in the government and ministers that have allegations of corruption on them? Why is it that the government did not, or the office of the president did not fire them because of those allegations? And they're also holding sensitive position, in fact, perhaps more critical than that of the Anti-Corruption Commission, because of the amount of money that they actually get to oversee in the execution of those funds. Millions of dollars, and scandals, the Russian scandal here, the ministers that have been accused of corruption, but the governments can come to their defense, the security report, their allegations, and then you name it. So, like I said, I just got to be convinced that this series of happenings made me understand that they're eventually going to do it, but the interest is actually not there.
Yeah. Sarjo, what is your contention with that entire government position when it comes to allegations of corruption for an individual that has been confirmed by the National Assembly to serve in the Anti-Corruption Commission?
I have not published about this yet. I know written, but let me just correct that.
Personally, I apologize.
No. That's fine. Because I intend to. When here's my thinking about it. To me, when the public contention begin, from my point of view, from a legal point of view, it's no news for me. I did not opine on it. I did not write about it because I'm only interested in the law and the process, how they interact. Now, I see fit and then compelled to even write when the VP stood in front of National Assembly and then stated that the reason for the delay is a nominee, because the VP did not identify which nominee it is. He said a nominee is being replaced because of, and I quote the word the minister, the honorable VP used was a claim of corruption that somehow casts a specter of doubt on the nominee's integrity, prompting the government to act to maintain public confidence in the institution meant to combat corruption. That's well-meaning. But once that statement was made by the minister, and then lawmakers put forward to either affirm or dispel if this claim of corruption is substantiated, the minister's answer was, I didn't say there was any adverse finding. It is not that he has been proven or not. So that's where I come in from a legal point of view. That admission, from my point of view, by the government signal a huge problem. Anti-Corruption Act is a statute. It requires how people are vetted, nominated, and then appointed. And then what we know from a public domain is the recruitment process took place. Once the finalists were submitted, they were sent to National Assembly, and then we know National Assembly approved those nominated individuals. What is unclear to me as I speak today is, after that approval by the National Assembly, whether these individuals receive an appointment notice or not, waiting for swearing in. If they received an appointment notice, but they are not yet sworn in, for the purpose of the act, they are considered appointed as a commissioner for that institution. Taking an oath is just a mere formality, a prerequisite to the function of the office, because we want process, rule of law. But they, for all purpose and intent of the law, they are commissioners. And then you can only remove them for a specified reason the law put in place and a specified process. And then you cannot just replace them because we find it inconvenient that it's creating doubt or bad publicity over alleged integrity of that nominee. That's my problem. I want a process to be there, and then that insulate the government as well as the nominee too. So you cannot just come and yank them out. Now, if the person has not been appointed, they never received an appointment letter, they are still qualified as a candidate. So to disqualify them, the act also puts certain things in check for you to go through that. What the government can do, the discretion they have, is to create a fair hearing to either affirm or dispel these allegations. If the government affirm the allegation, then they will be on the right legal footing to refuse appointment at that time. And then the process must go back, unfortunately, as Marr indicated, back to the recruitment process. You cannot even take from the best candidate that made the shortlist last time, because this is a statutory process. We cannot get it on a wrong footing. You have to go re-advertise, go through the process, and then bring in the next guy. That way, next time, people will be careful. And then that doesn't mean the nominee doesn't have the discretion to do what they want to do. But my problem is the process, because now it impugns wrongdoing where there is no finding. And I don't want an executive to have that unfettered power to remove a member of a commission without the checks the drafters put in place. Because once that happens, it's no longer an institution that is looking into corruption, but looking for someone's specific interest. No matter how well-intentioned or well-meaning the government goal is, they can still achieve that by following process. It's not difficult.
Yeah.
If you are worried about the propriety or the cloud it would put on the institution, do the right thing. It's one of two things. You could, and then there has to be process, notice, and an opportunity to be heard. I'm not saying the allegations or people's outcry is not concerning or doesn't even have merit. I'm not interested in that. I want process.
Yeah.
If you want to do that, you are the appointing body. And then we're like, hey, look, ex-nominee, this came to our attention. You received an appointment notice. We are going to instruct the Chief Justice to set up a panel as the act require, and this matter would go through. You'll have to go through the process. The outcome of that will dictate whether the Public Service Commission will make a recommendation to the President to remove. If it is cleared, you also, that's good for you. Or we have not yet appointed you, and then we want to notice you that we are going to withhold that appointment. We are setting up a discretionary committee to look into this issue. Their finding will dictate whether that we issue that appointment letter or not. That way the person also have a process. You don't want the person to have this cloud over his head, fairly or unfairly. That's my point. Follow the process. And then if the person tell you, you know what, this is wrong, it's untrue, but I don't want to, even entertain or give propriety to these issues, I want to voluntarily resign, it's resolved there. There is no finding of it, but at least we follow the process. I mean, that's what I want to drive hard in Gambia. How difficult could it be for us to just follow the process? This is why nothing gets fixed. Follow the process.
Yeah.
You do it, it's safe, it's cheaper. Everyone moved on. And then that's why, I was speaking about it, not because I agree or disagree with it. I just want people to follow the process. And I think it's about time we start following process. And then that's why we keep almost 10 steps backward. We keep cutting 10 times and then measuring once. Why not just measure 9 times and cut once? Do the right thing. That's what I wanted to address in that. Like when I saw that, to me, that was concerning. Because where does it stop? Today, it's a commissioner who is being approved by National Assembly. Tomorrow, it could be something else. So I want the government to have the courage to follow process, not just take a shortcut or a cheap way out.
No, Sarjo, I'm totally with you. Hopefully, Marr, you have a reaction to what Sarjo said, but I just want to add that I think it also skews the principle of separation of powers and checks and balances. But most fundamentally as well is, the idea of fair hearing. Whatever is an individual has been accused of, I think that aspersion sort of hover around his head unless he has an opportunity to make his case, either agree or contest whatever allegations that have been put before that person. But yes, Marr, if you have any reaction to what Sarjo says before we move to the final issue, and then we can wrap up.
I think so. The government should not be allowed to, to be used as a tool of personal vendetta, right? If people have personal issues with others, they should go to the courts. We have, I'm not a lawyer, but I guess we have like tort law that gets to deal with that. And if government is certain that this particular individual that you're supposed to confirm or appoint as anti-corruption commissioner has questions of integrity, right? As Council Barrow already mentioned, right? There are processes that have already, the law have dictated how this process is actually going to unfold, and you follow that. And in that said law, it has made clear, I guess Section 3 of the Anti-Corruption Act, subsection 5 says, I will read it, right? Subsection 4 says, the members, okay, it says, I need to find the exact word, but what the law actually says is, the members of the Anti-Corruption Commission shall be persons of proven integrity. So if you have actually identified these three, it's because of there is a vetting committee that is established by the Anti-Corruption Commission, which also have obviously members from the PMO and then a legal practitioner, FIU, Gambia Chamber of Commerce, and the civil society. If those people have vetted these individuals and they have certified that they are persons of integrity, right? Before this incident happened, if this incident happened after their investigation, what the government should do is actually go back to that vetting committee, right? And then they could revet that said individual, or establish an inquiry, a commission of inquiry, or maybe an ad hoc investigative board, sort of. I guess commission of inquiry will be grander. So, but then if you have like an
And
investigative board,
we love commissions in Gambia, so I'm not sure I'll buy that. We have a penchant for commissions.
not necessarily. Not necessarily. So they just need to get the vetting committee or have an investigative board to investigate. And like he said, like also give fair hearing to Almami, because you are actually basing your decisions on allegations, on speculations that have not been proven, and you have admitted that they are not proven allegations. So what it does is also affects the reputation of that said individual. No name have not been mentioned, but we all know the affected individual here is Almami Manga, without doubt. So it affects his credibility in a sense that if the government has taken this decision based on allegation, right, his future career could be questioned, right? If you want to pursue anything because of this, the position that the government has taken, and the media has already picked it up that obviously they mention names. So for me, I think that kind of breach the process itself, that kind of allow the government and give it leeway to delay this process as much as they could, because if they wanted to investigate it, they have all the resources and powers to actually do that. So like I said, the delay, I believe, is intentional. If there was interest from the onset, it would not have taken time. And we also need to go back and look at what has been done with this Anti-Corruption Act. And government always know they did their lobby with the National Assembly members, and it is the ruling party that have voted down this Anti-Corruption Act by deleting clauses that has to do with unexplained wealth. So if you are a parliamentarian or a government officer, you amass as many wealth as possible, but you could not justify if you're receiving $10,000 and you are found to live a luxury life that you cannot afford. The Anti-Corruption Commission was supposed to investigate that, and they deleted that from the Anti-Corruption Act. So
I mean, I think there's a lot of questions around, again, to the earlier point that I made, which is the question of separation of powers and checks and balances. A lot of this is just government coming and impose on National Assembly, and the National Assembly should not be the individuals who are, I think generally they should be representatives of their constituents and putting in place mechanisms that will insulate us from corruptible activities. But if whatever the government is bringing, like Sadio will always say, they give up their lawmaking power to the government. And it almost feels like they don't care enough what should protect the people that they represent from their communities. And that's a big problem. But on a second point, I think I also would like to add that this almost seems like to me that because you mentioned, Mar, the fact that the government did not proceed to follow the process, right, in this instant case with the person that is involved, it almost feels like even though we're not presuming any guilt or innocence in this case, if they proceed with all the information that is publicly available, it's more than likely that they are going to sort of revoke the appointment of these individuals, and which in turn is going to, for a very long time, affect the public, persona of this person in terms of getting jobs and opportunities. So who knows? You can never tell, but there is a presumption that, look, this is the best route. There could be something that within themselves they've worked on to say that, hey, we're not going to proceed with your appointment, but we're not also going to follow the process, because if we do, more than likely you are going to be found responsible. And questions of corruption and corruption allegation, we know how far that goes. You are going to be denied a lot of opportunities. You are going to be denied a lot of questions, a lot of jobs where that one of the yardsticks or prerequisites or requirement is to be a proven person of integrity. You're not going to get those. But Gambia is a place where we know there's a lot of things that go on the background. We don't like the follow process. Badia, Fasa, Karin Kanala, Doko Tinya, Kanala Soma Tinya. So who knows? A lot of things could happen there. But I think the most fundamental point all three of us can agree on is we have to follow process. It doesn't matter who is involved. If it is Ibrahim, follow the process. If it is Spada, we need to follow the process. We need to make sure that we have trust in the system and the process and the frameworks that are available to ensure that certain things are not allowed to happen. But yes,
What I want
Matt.
to add,
Yes.
what I want to add here is, I think Sarjo touched on it a little bit. The law is very clear as to how these commissioners can come into being, right? The president, the president role is more ceremonial. The National Assembly did first the open call was done, people applied, and there is a vetting committee. So the executive actually put aside from this whole process. They facilitated it. When it comes to the vetting, it is not solely done by the executive. Right? I did mention that you have the personal management office that is representing the government. You also have a legal practitioner from the Gambia Bar Association that is representing the lawyers. And then you have someone from the financial intelligence unit. Obviously, that's also representing the government. You also have someone from the private sector, the Gambia Bar Association, and a representative from civil society. So these are the these are the members of the vetting committee that gets to vet and make recommendations to the executive, right? So once they do that recommendation to the executive they act on that recommendation and they give it to the National Assembly. The National Assembly can reject any of the recommended anti-corruption commissioners. So they cannot be anti-corruption commissioners except the National Assembly confirm them. And that's why the law is very clear, Section 3, Subsection 4 of the Anti-Corruption Act, right? That the members shall be appointed by the president. To quote, the members shall be appointed by the president after consultation with the public service, subject to the approval of the National Assembly. So what I don't understand is if the National Assembly have already confirmed these anti-corruption commissioners, the law did not say anywhere where the president can reject any of the confirmed National Assembly members and throw it back to the National Assembly. I did not see that in the law. Maybe Sarjo, Council Sarjo, and others can help to explain that. What we do know, though, from other independent institutions like the National Audit Office, the Independent Electoral Commission, when it comes to their budget, the executive doesn't get to touch it, but they attach from their proposed budget, they get to attach a letter, a reservation on certain things that they have proposed because they are independent institution, and this is also supposed to be it is an independent institution. It's supposed to be an independent institution. We have not seen any letter that the president office wrote to the National Assembly that we have issues with this particular individual as a result. We think you should revisit this person because of the allegations that we have had, or we have conducted an investigation and found that this individual is his credibility is questioned, and as a result is not suitable and not advisable to be part of the Anti-Corruption Commission. None of those have been done. So on what basis are they acting on and replacing what the National Assembly that has the statutory powers to confirm these individuals as anti-corruption commissioners? What legal foundation or what legal grounds are they acting on?
Yeah. Good question. Sajo, you have a comment you want to share? Saltal is in the comments. He said he agrees with you. There's a lot of people Somebody also in the comments is asking whether you, in any capacity, the government of the Gambia is relying on your expertise to offer some subject matter support on a variety of issues. I think people are really interested to know the extent of your involvement in supporting the Gambia government.
Well, I'll stay mute. But we don't have shortage of experts in Gambia. That I do genuinely and sincerely believe that. And then Marr is correct. I know not everything will be spelled out in statute. I mean, I hope they are, but you take cues from there. Marr is correct. No one is appointed a commissioner unless National Assembly approves you. That's the line. That approval only signals that this person is ready to receive appointment. It's check and balances. All three entities interact. So the question is, once all these people were approved by National Assembly, meaning they have finished all the checks that has to be done. What is left? You still need an appointment letter. That comes from the executive. The president appoints in consultation with the Public Service Commission. That appointment comes at the last, even though it's said, because that's where you receive that seal. So National Assembly approved all these people. The question is, from my point of view, the way I looked at it from a law point of view, if they receive that appointment, you can only remove them as the process enshrined in Section 4, Subpart 3 of the Anti-Corruption Commission Act, which require they have to be gross or serious misconduct. And then the only way you could prove that, the Chief Justice have to set a panel, which basically is like a judicial panel, to go through that process. And a finding is made. Once that finding is made, it's sent back to the Public Service Commission, making recommendation to the president to rescind that appointment. Now, if National Assembly approve this individual, but they are yet to receive their appointment, so from the executive point of view, from a legal point of view, whether you are conservative or a little bit liberal, the government has some discretion. The question now becomes, there is a mandate. Parliament approved these people. You have an obligation to act. That act is, give me my appointment. The government is saying, no, we want to withhold this appointment. Something came up. Maybe it came up after our vetting. We are unaware, and prudent require. We're not going to give you this appointment later. If that happened in law, legally, there are two issues. The individual who has been approved could sue the government, asking the court to issue a mandamus to require the president to issue that appointment, right? And then, the government could be like, the reason we don't want to appoint you, something came up. And then since you don't receive that appointment, we are going to set up an independent panel to see whether you remain qualified even after this approval. Yeah. So that's where the legal distinction would be. The court will have the final say. And then this can bring us back to, the whole concept of judicial review, Madison v. Marbury, for us that are constitutional republic like the Gambia, the United States. The whole thing started with John Adams was on his final day in office. We call it midnight appointment, right? And then appoint a bunch of judges, including, Marbury as a justice of peace, this whole concept. Senate confirmed. The confirmation was done by the Senate. The appointment letter was signed. The messenger who should deliver that did not make it on time. The next day, a new president came in. He instructed his guys, don't give that appointment letter to Marbury. Never received that. And then they went to court. And then the court has to resolve that question because he never received that appointment. He never held that office.
Wow.
The mandamus failed. You cannot compel it. He never received that. And I remember as a intern in Michigan Attorney General's office, I had a similar issue that I had to brief. And then we had to go all the way back to England to look at that. This was, a Democratic governor was leaving and then issued a commutation to a prisoner who was having a very long time. This person is critical. I think it's of Islamic faith, So the commutation was given to the warden at the prison to give it to the prisoner. The next governor came in the following day, instruct the warden not to give that commutation because of this sentiment. Earlier we were talking about this whole immigrant issues, crime, and all this. You look tough. Like, don't give it. I'm canceling that commutation. And a former justice of the Michigan Supreme Court had to sue on behalf of that prisoner because the argument was when the warden received it, the warden was acting in custody of the prisoner, and then that commutation was received. And then it was a novel theory when I recite that. And then I remember my mentor, who still relevant, the then acting Attorney General, Pete Garvagin. I worked under him because I was very much interested in correction. We resolved that the whole case comes to what we call a gift. It's an inter vivos gift, for lack of better word. It's just donative intent. For gift, you need three elements. You have the donative intent, delivery, and acceptance. And then the issue was the donative intent was there. The governor made that crazy. Acceptance was presumed, as the court indicated, they would accept it. The question is whether delivery was met. When the warden received it, was that a delivery or not? We lost at the lower court, but the Supreme Court in Michigan later said that no, delivery never reached. The prisoner has to receive it in hand. It's interpretation. I'm not saying that's the right call or the wrong call, but it comes to the same thing to this appointment here. That's why, for me, what is unknown to me, have these commissioners received their appointment letters or not? That will dictate how they are removed from office. If that appointment letter is received, you can, no matter how uncomfortable or how cloud it may hang over the anti-commission, you cannot remove them by an executive fiat. You must follow the statute to the letter. It's very exacting, and then they put it there for a reason. If they don't receive that that appointment letter, the executive might have some discretion, but they still remain qualified because they have been vetted. National Assembly approved them, so they remain qualified. If you want to bring in a disability, you have a discretionary option to set up a committee to investigate that allegation. And once you find those allegations to be proven, then you have grounds to say, we are not going to issue this appointment, and this is why. You could restart the process again. That will justify it. You have some ground. But you cannot just decide that, well, it's more convenient to just forget about this thing and restart. That's unfair to whomever is involved in this issue. And it's also unfair to the citizen, the taxpayers, as well as the government, because there is no process. So for me, my point was, I want a process to happen. Or unless if it gets resolved by voluntary resignation for other party, the issue become quiet and it become moot. But you cannot just, and then when the VP said, we are in the process of replacement, how do you replace? If you have someone who is still qualified and approved by Parliament, unless that person, voluntarily resign, I'm not privy to the fact. If that happened, the minister is within their purview to say that would be perfectly okay. If the person says, you know what, to hell with it, this is too much. I want to volunteer for my country, yada yada yada, and then that's fine. But even in that situation, the government has the obligation, because the act requires, they have to go back to the drawing board, make that announcement, and then a process will start, vetted again before that person goes to National Assembly. The only thing I would have required, they would have done that with all deliberate speed to make sure it did act. But Marr says, and then that's where it will be justified for others who they will be like, well, maybe there is no will to make sure this thing go live. So stall it or start it with a hiccup for people to cry, hey, where is the public announcement? I may want to apply. So all right, we'll do that way again. So we keep reinventing the wheel until, who knows. Yeah.
Well, finally, Mar and Sarjo, and we can't have the Bantaba without talking about, very briefly, politics. Now, Standard newspaper announced that, I think as early as Monday, the United Movement for Change will be confirmed as a registered political party in the Gambia, together with another political party too. So two political parties would be announced on Monday from the office of the Independent Electoral Commission. Now, Mar, you conduct polls in the Gambia, part of the work that you do. And so we also know by July 1st, the coalition conversations that are ongoing, or negotiations, they are going to declare who is going to be leading the coalition talks that are going. So we also understand that it's not going to be a party-led, but it's going to be a candidate-led conversation. So I'm curious as to, what is your take in terms of the registration of United Movement, considering how long it took and some of the problems that they were facing in terms of the requirement of number of signatures that they were having, and the duplications of names and signatures that they were having? And are we expecting a Gambia Participates Sanson opinion poll, following the July 1st coalition, whatever is it, the outcome of that? Because it'll be interesting. I think a lot of people are looking forward to that. But yes, are we expecting? Yeah, Go ahead.
I'm also really, really looking forward to it. And the answer is yes. We actually in the process um, to do another poll. So in the next couple of weeks or months, we will get the polls out. Because I'm personally also interested to screen the current sentiments of voters. Has there been any shift of political position from the voter population? The 29% of undecided voters that we recorded last year, August, what has it changed? Has it reduced? Has it increased? So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And at Gambia Participates, yes, we already started the process.
What is there any significance to the introduction of new political parties at this point? Bearing in mind elections is just few months out.
Uh, I think, well, if it was countries like the US where individuals actually contest on party base, I will say yes. But the Elections Act does not limit political participation or individual running for public office to be sponsored by party tickets. There are two options. You could be sponsored by a party, and if you are an eligible voter and an eligible person, you can also be you can contest on independent tickets. So there are so many factors as well. If you look at our political context, there are those that aligned with a political party than an individual, and then you also have those that are aligned with an individual than that of the political party. So this is the reason why, if you look at our political trajectory, when it comes to presidential election, people vote more on party base. So I guess that is also the reason why it was very important for Unite to push harder to get their political party registered. At national election level, presidential people vote on party base, obviously, because they have their political identity, and I guess that's one of the strengths that political parties have. For individuals, except if they are backed by a coalition, right, they might likely not do well in national elections. This is the case for presidential election, but when you go to lower elections like the National Assembly, it is no more party based. It's about the individuals that is very close to the people. So that's the reason why, if you look at the history of the 2021 elections, Barrow literally won in all of the administrative regions, right? From Basse to Banjul, he won all of those regions. You look at the National Assembly elections 4 months after that, he was only able to secure one seat from West Coast all the way to Banjul, right? The remaining seats were distributed amongst independent candidates, and then also other candidates from different political parties. You go down to the mayoral and local government elections, you also get to realize, from LRR all the way to Banjul, he didn't get to have any seats, right? LRRs went to UDP, West Coast went to UDP, KM at the time still UDP, and then that of Banjul to UDP. So to go back to your question, I think yes, it is a game changer for the Unite, and then it kind of gives them the supporters a moral boost that they have achieved something else, right?
Yeah.
And to the incumbent, it is something I'm sure that they are watching very closely, and they're also preparing their counter attack. So, but everything is actually blurry right now, and that is the primary reason why I want to know where are we based on data. Go back, engage citizens, different citizens from last year's poll, and understand where we are currently.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mar. Sarjo, finally, what's your take in terms of the direction with which the coalition talks are going? Obviously, initially, a lot of people argued that it was going to be a party led. I think they've come to that decision. They've resolved to be a candidate led. Now, we know our history with coalitions, and it's not unique to Gambia. We know usually it happens. You go in after a few months or a year or two, and they separate, they all go, which is also natural because, power, human beings are by our very nature, once we have access to power, it just changes everything fundamentally, and we want more and more of it. And people that sometimes you're in agreement with, it just changes the nature of the agreements that have been set out in the beginning. So, what is the importance of having them coming together, if any? Obviously, you are not partisan, but you're political, and I'm sure you have opinions because we all care deeply about our country and the direction with which it goes. But do you think that makes any difference for them to have a candidate led instead of a party led? And also bearing in mind, this is a negotiation between them, us outsiders. We don't matter so much, but we care because if we can, we want to vote. So, do you have any opinions as to how they're going?
uh, I do, and then I also don't. Unfortunately, any statement I made might be prejudicial. Let me put it that way. And then why, we'll discuss that later. But what I can speak of is the work of Gambia Participates and others, the one with, what is his name? The brother at the university.
Separate.
Cyprus, and then the work they did. One thing it all points to, in order to unseat an incumbent in Gambia specifically, they need a coalition. How they arrived there, I don't know whether that would make a difference, but what the population and then the research indicate, they need a united front. Anything absent than that, they are not saying results might not defy those polls, but that would be an aberration, but not what is expected. So for me, this is what I said to people. Every Gambian should be political in the sense that the bottom line. Today I was driving, my wife was driving me. No, I was driving, we went for brunch coming down. And I was like, oh my God, gas is 318 within 7 days when I was back. I mean, I can't believe I'm saying it's 318. That's still good, roughly to where we are, 3 weeks ago. And then it hit me. I was like, well, I guess Hamouz is open. But my point is things go up when we face challenges, but it suddenly comes down. You've seen that, Ibrahim, there's so much to talk about, but one thing that is great about this place, people are not afraid to share opinion, agree to disagree, but things come down. I was like, okay, in Gambia, if something goes up, it never comes down. Why? If we are saying this is the catalyst for something to go up, why is that not thing coming down if that catalyst change? Because that's the equalization. So those are the conversations I want people to have, people to be political. And then I'm of the opinion that except for DOI, where the economic policy is fundamentally different, and then the governance structure, almost every political party from A to Z is literally the same on paper, with some nuances. And I know I tease about this on my status WhatsApp, just as I put all things over there. The question is leadership. Who is willing to do what it takes to pull us out of what's here? So those are the questions you ought to ask yourself. I can guarantee you all these political parties will tell you, we want to fix your road. We want to give you clean drinking water. We want you to have very good electricity. I'm like, okay, show me the numbers. Leave this card. Let's see, how you're going to do that. And then for those that already have report card, review their report cards. It's called predictive finding.
Yeah.
Half of my job, and the law empower me to do predictive finding, whether someone could show a clear probability that their life or freedom will be threatened, where they're going. I have to make those tough decisions, but I have to look at the objective facts when making those predictive findings. The same way I want Gambians to engage in that. Use what you have before. Well, if you don't do this yesterday, why should I believe you will do it now? What's changed? Or okay, what can you give me to make my life much better? These are the conversations people should start having, because things are getting difficult, and then those are the realities. With the meager resources we have, you need someone who would put in austerity measures to change it. And then once we actually have a government, then I want politics to take a different shape. That's what I want to see in Gambia. We are in election season right now. Everyone should campaign vigorously for your party, put your plan, what you want to do, and let citizens some claim would definitely strain the credibility of the credit laws. You don't just have to be gullible and accept it. But once come December 6th, we have a precedent. Everyone should make sure that government doesn't fail, because it failed, we all think they fail. That's where I disagree with most people. Politics end on December 6th. And then for the next 5 years, we need to make sure the government doesn't fail. How do you do that? If they are going wrong, Tell them, we know faith. That's what we know. Because kila sala salam kami kabria nyinin ko dino ngala ne ko ni mo mbari to how to fight. But what if he's in the wrong? Speak the truth to him. Support institutions like Gambia Participate. They see something wrong. They want to do transparency requests, FOIA or litigation. Support them, because if they get it right, think of what Marr did. I think it's Marr or one of those groups regarding the debt, not the debt actually, the loan scheme National Assembly wanted to give themselves. Thank goodness for their action. Think of it as the tariff issue here, when the money has to go back. I don't want to get into, because of my, I don't want to get into certain policies. But for Gambia, sometimes when I sit and then think about that, you're a National Assembly member. The salary you received, you want to give yourself a loan scheme where even if we keep you employed, and then your entire salary, annual salary, you put to refinance that loan, even zero interest, you won't be able to pay it until you retire. That is not a loan. That is fraud. That's what we call a Ponzi scheme.
Yeah.
Like, why can't people think about that? It doesn't mean you are against the government. You want things to be better.
Yeah.
Today I was watching news. There's this beautiful facility they built in Farad Hospital. And I'm very much proud of it, what the government built. So what's next? We have this, create strong laws, regulation to make sure we maintain that. But most importantly, complement the support. If I were a National Assembly, the government is not going to pay a cent of insurance to any public servant. Hani fresco lita jarala Dakar. You'll go to that hospital. We'll come with a legislation. That's where you get treated. You started doing that, the institutions will reflect people if they receive those treatment over there. You are a public official, your daughter or son is in the private school, there would be a presumption in the law that would open an automatic audit. Just like how taxes is here, IRS. You prove to us where that extra income is coming. We have no problem. If you could show the receipt, perfectly good. But the moment, because we are at a stage where we need to fix system to make it better, to move forward. And then anyone who want to come into public office, you should be willing and ready to sign up for that. That's what I want to see going. Until we get things better, then we can get back to how the rest of the world are doing it. But for us now, we need work to be done yesterday to getting those things right. That's what I wanted to see.
Yeah. Well, gentlemen, we'll have to leave it here. Thank you so very much, both of you, and also for Malmo, who has been here, and Melvin, who could not contribute for some reason for the second time, which is pretty unfortunate. But I still appreciate all of you joining. Also, the NPP youth representative, who also agreed to come on, but I think they're politicking right now. So for some reason, I I try to avoid people to join people who, especially if you're driving in the Gambia. I don't want to be the reason why something happens to you. So we just had to leave that where it was. But again, thank you both very much for all of your perspectives and your contributions. Marr, I keep telling you this all the time. I cannot say enough how proud I am of you. Such an honor to know you and all the important work you continue to do for the country and also the continent of Africa and the world generally. As I'm talking to you, I know right now you're in Greece. You're in those places and those spaces to learn, to get resources that are going to be materially beneficial for you and what you're doing in the Gambia. So I want to tell you, with all of the criticism that comes with it, I know you're used to it. These spaces can get diluted sometimes, especially with politicians. But stay focused, keep up the good work, and we'll always be here to support you. Obviously, Sarjo is my big brother, mentor. Always an honor to get lectures and knowledge from you. So thank you both very much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you. And Sarjo, I know we have not met before, but I've also been silently reading some of your pieces. Very helpful. This is what complements the work that we do as advocates. We are not lawyers. We are advocates. We are right advocates. So there are things that actually you guys get to write. If you have scholars, legal practitioners that get to write these pieces, it also kind of help shape our advocacy. It also kind of help educate the masses to get to understand what these issues are. I mean, I know we're running out of time, but I just have to commend the work of Sarjo before I come to you. If you look at countries like the US and England, they don't only depend on judge's verdict. They also get to make their analysis on what this means, right? Was it a right call? Was it a wrong call? What could have been done? So this is what we need in our democratic processes, right? So I think we need more people. I've seen many people writing, but I think we kind of not kind of, but we really highly appreciate the work that you guys do. And Ibrahima, well, I just fortunately I was having a conversation with Bakar, and we were talking about you and what you were doing, how you're balancing work, life, and then making this impact back home, and enlightening people. So I think this is what we need as Gambians. The moment we get to sacrifice and let go of our security duty, we opening up the floodgates of government becoming more tyrannical and autocratic, and that's what we should not be doing. And for the critics, honestly, Ibrahim, that's what I need. Without it, I won't be where I am today. So we definitely know those coming in every now and then. But thank you to both of you for what you do.
Appreciate it. Sarjo, thank you, man. Thank you for being here once again. It means a lot to me. Anytime you make time for us to be here, and I'm sure it's not going to be the last. So once again, Allah Baraka Babak, and you all have a wonderful Saturday.
Thank you. And then Jambaro Leve Gambia. For us, we ran away. So anyone that stayed, I tell them, they are the brave ones. The people that stay and then to fight under what I perceive to be incomprehensible environment, especially advocacy work, with the way the laws are designed, how you could be frustrated. I believe Gambia police, they would have their work cut out so easily if they just have been afraid and then follow the law. I'm telling you, they would have so much goodwill, it wouldn't be funny. I don't know what's the fear. I don't know who's at the top, but just be open. You don't have anything to hide. In fact, you'll get more support. Things that should not make news because there is no system. Today I read, a lawyer gets stopped from seeing their client. This is not the first time. Sometimes I would see in judgment. Go to the Bureau of Prisons website. Only you need is a bar card. How many states have I flew in? I'm not saying you don't have security. If a lawyer want to bring in a knife to see a client, that would be a security issue. But have visitation hours. It's called time, place, and manner. Okay, it should be clear. Every junior officer should know it. You come, you have a Gambia bar card, or I don't know what they have, but you have your identification or whatever shows that you are a lawyer with a valid identification card that shows that you are the individual. Allow the person in. Lawyers have Monday through Sunday visiting right. They come anytime. Basic things that should never make news. Government take one step and then some moron bring it 10 steps backward. And then these are the things that so, especially in election season. If I'm the principal, these are the things I'm looking into. I'm holding my, sub-principals to account. Why is this happening? Why do you need to call the boss? And then why do you have to come on the defensive to even say that, no, we don't deny them after stopping them? Allow them to enter. If what we call during a head count, there are times I go to detention centers, prison, I want to see, they were like, oh, from 4 to 5, we're doing a head count. Because prison, they do all those things. You can't come in now. But it's clearly communicated. I don't need to see the boss. I don't need to see the warden. I only need my barcode with my ID. Stuff like those. Have clear process. Let people follow it. And then if they don't, make them, let them be held accountable. But it requires the people at top. But this idea that everything you're doing it for the principal is helping you. I want Gambian to learn. I mean, when they go and get tough, you're going to get thrown under the bus like in a heartbeat. And then we've seen Gambians convicted in other countries, people. So follow the rules, follow the process, and then it will work. If you don't know, ask. And then those are the kind of things. And then, but either they do it at will, or they will be forced to do it with the work of Gambia Participates and others that are doing it. It might be difficult. It may take some time, but I hope they understand that they can actually do a lot of good by just following the law. It would be good for everybody. Yeah.
True. Certainly. Oh, once again, thank you so much, gentlemen. And all of our audience as well. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Uncle Saltal, and everybody else in the comments. Sal has a pending question, but Sarjo, I'm going to copy it and send it to you. Probably
Okay.
you can both take it out of here. Yes. But yeah, thank you all, man. You all have a